Come in and let your shoulders drop. Just for tonight, let them drop. Wherever you are right now, whatever chair, whatever bed, whatever quiet corner you found, let it hold you. You don't have to hold yourself up anymore tonight. You don't have to hold anything up tonight. Because there's a truth that wants to settle into you. Not just pass through your mind, but settle down into the tired places, down into the places that have been carrying something for a long time. And the truth is this: you can't mess up God's plans. Say it back, quietly, in your own heart if you want to. You can't mess up God's plans. Not with that decision you keep replaying. Not with that year you lost. Not with the door you walked through that you probably shouldn't have. Or the door you didn't walk through. The one you still wonder about at 2 a.m. Not with any of it. You can't mess up what God is doing. I know that's hard to believe tonight. I know there's a version of you that has a whole list ready. A list of all the ways you think you've derailed something good. The job you didn't take. The relationship you held onto too long or let go too soon. The words you said in anger that you can't unsay. The years you spent numb or afraid or just surviving when you meant to be living. You've got the list. Maybe you've had it memorized for years. Tonight, we're not arguing with the list. We're not pretending it isn't there. We're just going to set it down, gently, at the feet of a God who was never surprised by a single thing on it. Let that be the first thing that settles. Not one item on your list surprised him. Not the mistake, not the delay, not the detour. He saw it before you were born, before the stars were hung in place. And he built a plan that was never fragile enough to be broken by your humanity. Breathe with me. In and out. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands rest open, not clenched into fists around a life you think you have to force into shape. Open hands, because open hands are what faith actually looks like, not gripping, not white-knuckling every decision, terrified that one wrong move will unravel everything. Open, because you were never the one holding it all together in the first place. You were never the author of this story. You've always been a character in it, a beloved one, a cherished one, but a character nonetheless. And an author is never at the mercy of his characters. He is never pacing the room, wondering if you've ruined the ending. He already knows the ending. He wrote it before the beginning. So let your mind go there tonight. To the truth that your worst decision was never powerful enough to hijack a plan that started before time. Your best decision wasn't powerful enough to complete it either. It was never all resting on you. That's the relief, hiding underneath the fear. It was never all resting on you. I want you to think, for a moment, about a river. Not a straight canal, cut with rulers and concrete, doing exactly what engineers demanded of it. A real river. The kind that curves around a mountain because the mountain was there first. The kind that pools in a low place for a season, still moving, just slower, gathering itself. The kind that sometimes looks, from where you're standing, like it's going the wrong way entirely. Doubling back, disappearing under rock, dropping suddenly out of sight. But the river always reaches the sea. It doesn't reach the sea in spite of the curves. It reaches the sea because of them. The curve isn't a wrong turn. The curve is the river reading the land and moving, with a wisdom water has always had, long before anyone was there to see it. And you have spent your life, maybe, believing every curve in your story was proof you'd gone wrong somewhere. What if the curve was never a mistake? What if the curve was simply the shape the plan needed to take to get you where you were always headed? Rest in that a moment. Just rest. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from believing you are the sole engineer of your own life. From believing that if you don't manage every variable perfectly, the whole structure collapses. That exhaustion isn't holiness. It isn't responsibility. It's a heavy, borrowed weight that was never yours to carry, and it will crush you slowly if you let it keep sitting on your chest night after night. Let it come off tonight. Let it slide off your shoulders and onto the ground, and leave it there. You were made to walk in step with something larger than your own vigilance. Not to walk ahead of God, scouting out every danger and preempting every failure through sheer force of worry. Not to walk behind, dragging your feet in shame over what's already been done. Just alongside, present, breathing. trusting that the same hands that set galaxies spinning in perfect silent order are more than capable of holding the small tangled thread of your one life. Let's talk honestly about the fear underneath all this, because it deserves to be spoken, not just soothed over. The fear says, if I make one more wrong move, I will finally push this too far. I will finally exhaust the grace. I will finally prove that I was too much, too broken, too far gone for the plan to hold. That fear is a liar, and it has always been a liar, and it will keep being a liar for as long as you let it whisper to you in the dark. Grace was never a finite resource, rationed out until it ran dry the day you needed it most. Grace was never a bank account you could overdraw. It renews. It doesn't just tolerate you after a failure. It meets you there. It was already waiting in the very place you thought you'd ruined, arms open before you even finished falling. Think of every person who ever felt like their life had gone completely off the rails, and yet found, years later, that the very detour they were ashamed of became the road that led them exactly where they needed to be. The friendship that only formed because of a cancelled flight. The calling that only became clear after the career that fell apart. The tenderness in someone's voice that only exists because they know what it is to be lost and found again. None of that was despite the mistake. Some of it was carried by the mistake, transformed, repurposed, folded into something the person could never have written on their own. That is not an accident of storytelling. That is the character of the one writing it. I want you to notice something about how you've been living, and I say this softly, not as an accusation, just as an invitation to see it clearly. You have been treating your life like a performance that could fail, like there was an audience keeping score and one drop line could end the show. But this was never a performance. It was never a test you could fail out of. It has always been a relationship, unfolding, patient, generous, far more forgiving than you've allowed yourself to imagine. A relationship doesn't end because you stumbled in it. A relationship deepens because of how it holds the stumble. So tonight, let the stumbles you've been carrying come up, one at a time, without panic. Not to relive them, just to release them. See the moment, see yourself in it, doing the best you could with what you knew, carrying what you were carrying at the time. And now see it held, gently, by hands that were never going to let your story end there. Let it go. Let each one go. There is something else I want you to receive tonight, and it's this. The timeline was never yours to keep either. You've been measuring your life against a clock that was never handed to you by the one who made you, comparing your 25 to someone else's 25, comparing your unfinished 35 to someone else's finished 35, wondering if you're behind, as if there were a schedule you signed onto before you were born, a schedule you've been quietly failing to keep. There is no such schedule. There is only a plan, unfolding at the pace that plan requires, through the person you actually are, not the person you imagined you'd have to be by now. Some things take longer to grow because they were built to last longer. A weed can shoot up overnight and be gone by the next week. A tree that will still be standing when your grandchildren are old takes decades just to find its footing. If your life feels slow right now, if it feels like everyone around you is somewhere further down the road, consider that you may not be behind. You may simply be rooting. Rooting doesn't look like progress. It looks like stillness. It looks like nothing is happening. But underground, in the dark, in the place no one can see, something is reaching down and finding its hold, preparing to bear a weight that shallow roots never could. Let your current season be that. Not evidence of failure, but evidence of depth being built, quietly out of sight, for a strength you will need later and do not need yet. Breathe again with me, in through the nose, slow, and out, longer than the in-breath, all the way out. Let your whole body soften another degree. Let your feet get heavy. Let your hands get heavy. There's nowhere else you need to be right now except exactly here, being carried instead of carrying. I want to speak now to the specific fear some of you brought into this night. The fear that you have hurt someone else's story by your own mistakes. That your choices didn't just cost you something, they cost someone you love something too. That guilt is real, and I won't pretend it away. But even there, even in the tangled place where your failures touched someone else's life, the plan was not undone. God is not wringing his hands over the damage, wondering how to salvage a story that got knocked off course by your humanity. He has always known how to weave repair into a narrative. He has always known how to turn confession into closeness, and closeness into healing that could not have existed without the very rupture that caused it. This doesn't excuse what was done. It doesn't erase the need to make amends where amends can still be made, to apologize where an apology is owed, to change where change is required. Grace was never a reason to stop trying, but grace is the reason you don't have to carry the terror that your failure was bigger than his redemption. It never was. It never will be. Let your breathing find its own rhythm now. Don't manage it. Just let it happen, the way it happens when you're almost asleep and no longer thinking about the mechanics of breathing at all. There's an old kind of comfort in realizing you are not the main character carrying the plot on your own shoulders. You are held inside a much larger story, one that has room in it for your regressions and your regrowth, your seasons of running and your seasons of finally sitting still long enough to listen. The story doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. It needs you to keep showing up, even after the falling, even after the years you'd rather not remember, even after the version of yourself you're embarrassed to think about. Because here is the deepest comfort of all. The plan was never really about your performance. It was about your becoming. Not becoming flawless, becoming someone who has been loved through every flaw and who slowly learns to love that way too. Someone who has been forgiven so many times that forgiveness starts to feel less like an event and more like the air you breathe. You cannot mess that up. You cannot outfail a love like that. You cannot wander so far that the plan can no longer find you, because the plan was never a place. It was never a straight line you had to stay perfectly centered on for fear of falling off the edge. The plan is a person walking with you, and a person cannot be lost the way a path can. Wherever you are tonight, however far you feel from where you think you should be, he is exactly there with you, not waiting for you at some finish line, disappointed by your pace. Right here, in the mess, in the tiredness, in the doubt, let your mind settle on that image for a while. Not a finish line far in the distance that you're failing to reach, but a presence right beside you in this exact moment, unhurried, unbothered by your pace, simply glad to be near you. I want to gently turn now to something that might be tender to hear, but I think it needs to be said. Sometimes the fear of messing up God's plan isn't really about God at all. Sometimes it's about control. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned that safety meant managing every outcome ourselves. That if we could just plan carefully enough, perform well enough, avoid every mistake precisely enough, we could protect ourselves and the people we love from pain. And so failure doesn't just feel like failure. It feels like a betrayal of that whole system of control we built to survive. But you were never meant to carry that kind of weight. No one was. It is not a design flaw in you that you cannot control every outcome. It is a mercy, because a life you could fully control would also be a life you'd have to fully save on your own, and none of us are strong enough, or wise enough, or far-seeing enough for that. The very fact that you can't control it all is what leaves room for something greater than you to move through it. So, let control go, just for tonight. Let it slip out of your hands the way tension slips out of a muscle when you finally stop clenching it. You don't have to know how tomorrow resolves. You don't have to know how the mistake gets redeemed, or when, or in what form. You only have to keep walking, one unremarkable day at a time, trusting that the same hand that has carried the story this far has not suddenly grown tired, or forgetful, or unwilling to finish what it started. There is a kind of rest available to you that has nothing to do with your circumstances lining up. It's not the rest of everything being solved. It's the rest of no longer needing everything to be solved before you can breathe. That rest is available to you tonight, right where you are, mistakes and all, unresolved threads and all. Let your body feel heavier now. Let the mattress or the chair take more of your weight. There is nothing left to prove tonight. There is nowhere left to perform. There is only this, being held. I want to slow down here because there's more to say about the mistakes themselves. The actual, specific ones you've been quietly rehearsing tonight while I've been talking. Not to name them out loud, just to hold them differently than you've been holding them. You have probably believed, somewhere deep down, that your mistake is the one exception. That everyone else's failures get folded into some larger good, but yours is different. Yours is the one thing too messy, too costly, too late to be redeemed. I want you to hear this clearly. There is no exception clause. There is no fine print in grace that excludes your particular story. The very fact that it feels unforgivable to you is not evidence that it's outside the reach of redemption. It's evidence of how deeply you understand what was at stake. And that kind of understanding, that kind of grief over what happened, is often the very soil where the deepest healing takes root. Think about raw material for a moment. A sculptor doesn't need clean marble to make something beautiful. Sometimes the most extraordinary work comes from stone that was cracked, or oddly shaped, or seemed at first glance unusable. The sculptor doesn't see the crack as a problem to work around. The sculptor sees it as part of the material to work with, sometimes even the very feature that makes the finished piece unrepeatable, unlike anything that could have been carved from a flawless block. Your mistake is not scrap material. It is not waste to be swept up and thrown away. It is raw material, still being shaped, still being worked by hands far more skilled than yours or mine. This doesn't mean the mistake didn't cost anything. It did. Some costs are real, and they don't disappear just because a larger good eventually grows around them. But cost and ruin are not the same thing. A thing can cost you dearly and still not be the end of your story. In fact, the places that cost you the most are so often the very places. The deepest parts of who you're becoming get formed, not because pain is good in itself, but because you were never left alone in it. Something was always being built there, even when it felt like everything was only breaking down. Let's talk about waiting too, because so much of what feels like a ruined plan is really just an unfinished one. You look at where you are right now, and it doesn't match the picture you had in your mind of where you'd be by now. And the temptation is to read that gap as proof that something went wrong. But a gap between where you are and where you hope to be is not proof of failure. It might simply be proof that the story isn't finished yet. Nobody reads the middle of a book and declares it a bad book because the conflict hasn't resolved on page 40. The tension in the middle isn't a mistake in the storytelling. It's the storytelling. It's the very thing that makes the resolution, whenever it comes, mean something. If your life right now feels like it's stuck in an unresolved middle chapter, let that be all it is. An unresolved middle chapter, not a broken book. The author isn't finished. The author is rarely finished exactly when we want him to be, but unfinished is not the same as failed. I want you to notice, too, how much energy you've spent comparing your unfinished chapter to someone else's finished one. Scrolling through a life that looks tidy from the outside and measuring your tangled middle against their clean resolution, forgetting that you never see anyone else's middle. Only their outsides, their highlight reels, the smoothed over version they chose to show. You have no way of knowing what their actual middle looked like, how many nights they lay awake wondering if they'd ruined everything too. Let that comparison fall away tonight. It was never a fair measurement, and it was never yours to make. Here's something gentler to hold instead. What if the very things you're most ashamed of are quietly becoming the things that will let you sit with someone else, years from now, in their own version of this same fear, and say, truly, I understand. I've been there. And it didn't end you. What if your healing was never meant to be a private transaction between you and God alone, but a light that someone else, someday, desperately needed to see burning in a window? Your mistake, redeemed, becomes a lantern for somebody still lost in the dark. That is not wasted pain. That is pain finding its purpose. Let your breathing slow again, in and out, long and unhurried. Let your thoughts stop grabbing at every loose thread and just float. There's nothing urgent left to solve tonight. I also want to speak to the part of you that measures your worth by your usefulness. The part that believes if you're not producing, achieving, fixing, moving forward, then you must be failing the plan somehow. That belief is exhausting, and it was never true. You are not a project to be completed efficiently. You are a person being loved patiently through every season, including the ones that look like nothing is happening at all. Rest is not a departure from the plan. Rest is sometimes the plan. There is no chapter being written about you tonight where the patience finally runs out. There is no version of this story where he grew tired of waiting, tired of the same mistake happening twice, tired of how long it took you to heal or to learn, or to finally stop and listen. Patience like that isn't a tactic he's using on you. It's who he has always been, long before you were the one needing it. And it's who he'll still be long after tonight. So let your hands stay open. Let your breathing stay slow. Let the parts of you that have been performing, achieving, apologizing, over-explaining, finally stop, just for these last few minutes, and simply exist. Loved, held, unhurried, unbroken beneath it all. Maybe, tonight, your worry has a specific shape. Maybe it's about work, a career that didn't go where you thought it would, a path you abandoned, a dream you let quietly die because life got in the way. If that's you, hear this. The plan was never dependent on you choosing the perfect job at 22 and riding it flawlessly to the finish line. Skills you built in seasons that felt wasted are still yours. Lessons you learned in rooms you wish you'd never entered are still yours. Nothing you gathered along the way, even in the wrong job, even in the failed venture, even in the years you spent unsure what you were even doing, was gathered for nothing. It is all still in your hands, ready to be used whenever the moment calls for it. Maybe your worry tonight is about a relationship, someone you loved and lost, someone you should have loved better while you had the chance, a marriage that ended, a friendship that faded, a family that fractured in ways you still don't fully understand. If that's you, hear this too. Love that ends is not proof that love was wasted. Every person who ever shaped you, even briefly, even painfully, left something behind that is now part of how you love the people still in front of you. The plan was never contingent on every relationship in your life lasting forever, unbroken, unchanged. Some relationships are given to you for a season, to teach you something you couldn't have learned any other way, and their ending, however painful, doesn't mean the plan failed. It might mean that particular part of the plan is simply complete. And maybe your worry tonight is quieter than any of that. Maybe it's just the sense that you've drifted from God himself, that you used to feel close to him and don't anymore, that prayer feels like static, that faith feels thin, that you've wandered so far into doubt or distraction that you're not even sure he's still looking for you. If that's you, hear this most of all. Distance you feel is not the same as distance that exists. He has not moved. He does not wander off when you get quiet, or numb, or angry, or lost in your own head for a season. He is patient in a way that outlasts every one of your doubts. He is not keeping score of how long it's been since you last felt close. He is simply here, the way he has always been here, waiting for you to notice again, whenever you're ready, with no penalty for how long it took. Whatever shape your worry takes tonight, let it be met by the same truth underneath all of it. You have not moved outside the reach of the plan. You have not wandered further than grace can travel. There is no distance, no delay, no depth of doubt or regret that puts you beyond where he is willing to go to find you. I want you to picture, if you can, every version of yourself across the years. The anxious teenager, the overwhelmed young adult, the person in the middle of the hardest season you've faced so far, and the person you are tonight. Picture all of them in a single room, side by side, and picture the same steady presence standing quietly near each one, in every scene, in every year, never once having left, never once having given up, never once treating any of those versions of you as a lost cause. That presence is not new to you tonight. It has been with you the whole time, in every version of the story you thought you'd ruined. The plan was never fragile. You were never capable of shattering it with a single bad decision, or a string of them, or a decade of them. The plan has already absorbed your worst moment and is still standing, still moving forward, still leading somewhere good. Somewhere you cannot yet see, but somewhere real. Let your breath grow even slower now. There's no rush left in this room. No deadline, no test to pass before sleep is allowed to come. Just this. A body finally believing it is safe enough to rest. A mind finally believing it doesn't have to solve everything before it's allowed to let go. You can't mess up God's plans. Let that phrase become something you carry into sleep tonight, not as a fact you have to defend, but as a truth you get to lean back into, the way you lean back into a chair that was built to hold your full weight. You don't have to brace. You don't have to check if it will hold. It will hold. It has been holding you the whole time. Think of the years behind you, All of them. The good ones and the ones you'd rather forget. Every single one of them is already inside the plan. Not despite what happened in them, because of what happened in them, in ways you may not fully understand until much further down the road, maybe not until you're looking back on all of this from somewhere far ahead, wondering how you ever thought a season like this one could undo something so much bigger than you. And think of the years ahead of you too, however many there are, however uncertain they feel from here. They are not resting on your ability to get everything right. They are resting on a faithfulness that has never once failed to show up, even in the years you didn't notice it, even in the years you were too tired or too afraid or too numb to look for it. Let your hands stay open tonight. Let your jaw stay soft. Let your breathing stay slow and unhurried. There's nothing left to hold on to so tightly. There's nothing left to fix before you're allowed to rest. You can't mess up God's plans. Not with the past you carry. Not with the mistakes that still ache when you think about them late at night. Not with the fear that you're somehow behind or lost or too far gone to be found. None of that has ever had the power to undo what was written before you took your first breath. So rest now. Really rest. Let the weight of the day slide off you and settle into the dark, where it belongs, where it can be sorted out by hands far more capable than yours. You don't have to solve anything else tonight. You don't have to prove anything else tonight. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, carried by a plan too strong for you to break, held by a love too patient for you to exhaust. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your thoughts grow quiet, one by one, like lights turning off down a long hallway until only a single soft glow remains. The quiet knowledge that you are safe, that you are known, that you are loved beyond anything you've done or failed to do. You can't mess up God's plans.